Hey everyone, it's Caleb from Caleb's Trades here today, and in today's video we're continuing on the HO scale 4x8 layout build brought to you and sponsored by Berkshire Station. In today's video we're actually going to be showing you my process with the track work. Although it's a very boring process, it is something that every model railway has to have. It's one of the fundamentals, and if you do the track work right, you won't have any problems running trains. And yes, it is very boring, especially with soldering wires, but I figured I'd go ahead and give you a little bit of insight of my progression with this and exactly how I'm doing it to make sure that all operations on the layout are nice and smooth. So without further ado, let's get into it. This video is brought to you and sponsored by Berkshire Station. Berkshire Station is a train store located in Iron Station, North Carolina that specializes in carrying new and used products in the model railroading industry. They have a wide range of products including HO scale, N scale, O scale, and even some G scale products. If you guys haven't had the chance to check out this train store yet, definitely make sure to. They're a fantastic train store, and most of the stuff that I bought from my collection has actually been from them. So I definitely trust this brand, and they're a really good brand to work with. And yeah, definitely make sure to check them out if you haven't already. I will leave a link in the description below to their website and also their address if you'd like to visit their storefront today. So the layout might not look like much right now, but what we have here is the fundamentals of the track laying. So we actually have some of the track right now glued to the foam roadbed, and there's still some progressions, but I purposely left it like this so that I could show you every single step of exactly what I'm doing on this layout, and also some things to look out for when you're using switches by Pico. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but it's fine. I just wanted to definitely let you guys know something about these. These are fantastic switches, but there's very, very important characteristics about these that you need to be aware of to make sure that these work right with a DCC layout like this is. So this layout's going to be powered by an NCE power cab. My panel is not that pretty right now. It's just kind of on the layout for now until I get the custom control boards done for the switches, which these switches are going to have switch motors built into them at some point. So I'm going to make custom control boards, and I would like to incorporate this into that custom control board so that it's nice and flush, and it should be really nice. But so what we have here is a layout that I've actually based on a track plan. I believe it was called the Cumberland in Ohio, and I've modified it to actually incorporate 22-inch radius on the outside and 18-inch radius on the inside at a minimum, including the industry tracks here to make sure that there's no derailments with modern freight cars. This layout, the time period is going to be, loosely based on the 50s and up, just so that I can run older equipment, but the majority of the stuff that I'm going to have is modern equipment. So back to track work though, essentially what I do with my steps and processes on track work is I first of all lay it out on the table, just like I have over here. Like just fully lay it out on the table, experiment with the different track pieces. If you have flex track, just take some thumbtacks. I've got one right here for an example. So what I'll do with a piece of flex track is I'll take it, I'll curve it to how I want, and then each piece of track has a little hole right here, and I will take the thumbtack and put it in that hole just to make sure that it holds it. And if it's still a little rough, I will just put a thumbtack there on the edge just to make sure that it holds it. And then what I'll do is I take a Sharpie and I trace it. So right here I've done it with a thin Sharpie, indicating that this is a freight siding, okay? This is how I code my things. Now if it's a mainline or a very important siding that I need to be aware of and wire correctly, I draw it with a thick Sharpie. So this siding is going to have a lot of wiring because of the Pico switches. Now what I mean by that, I have a brand new one over here that I just got that is going to be installed over here with a switchback design. With Pico switches, they're very nice. They're very reliable switches, but if you get one of these with an electro frog right here, okay, which means you can power this frog, and it's already pre-powered whenever you hook it up to the layout, you have to make sure to follow the wiring diagram here on the back. So on this wiring diagram, you will notice that there are some little cutouts right here. This is for the insulated rail joiners, which I have right here. They're little plastic rail joiners. Super easy to use. They go, on, actually I think a little smoother than normal rail joiners, which is funny. But if you don't use those in the correct pattern, which I have depicted right here, it will short the layout out. So I have the two rail joiners right here, and you have to make sure to do this or it will short the layout. Now I have gone the extra step with this. You can cut the wire right here as well if you want to double ensure that it's fine. and I actually cut the wire right there at the connection joint right here. And then these all, and that's if you want to power the electrofrog from a switch motor, which is exactly what I'm doing to make sure that when I flip the tracks, the polarity is switched. And I know that sounds complicated, but don't worry. Whenever I do these switch motors, I'll fully explain everything I'm talking about on a new video. But essentially, these already have the wire for the electrofrog sticking out. You'll just wire that into the switch motor. But these are very, very nice switches, but be careful to make sure you have those insulated rail joiners. It will save you a lot of headache just to read the instructions on the back of it. I figured this out myself. I did not look at the back. Powered up the layout and could not figure out for like 2 hours while it was shorting out. So, you know, I live and learn myself. As you can see, I mostly have an O-scale layout back there, so I'm still learning myself with all the nice stuff in HO scale. But it's fun to learn. So, yeah, definitely make sure to do that. So, the next step of the process, and this is very important if you're going to be doing switch motors. So, you get the foam bed, right? And this Woodland Scenics foam bed is very nice because you just cut it down the middle with a X-Acto knife, and then that's how you make the curve sections. It goes on just like cork road bed, super easy to install. I actually like how quiet it is. It is definitely quieter than cork, and honestly it went on the layout easier than cork. Sometimes with cork I have a little bit of problems with the with like it crumbling up and stuff, and I know it depends on the quality of cork, but there's also a cork shortage right now, so I'm perfectly okay going with the foam bed. But one of the most important things with this is when you're installing the switches. So as you can see, I have purposely left this one uninstalled so that I can show you exactly what I mean by this. So it doesn't look very pretty, but don't worry, all this is going to be ballasted. If you're going to be installing a switch motor, which is a motor that goes underneath the layout and actually has a rod that comes out of it that you can move back and forth, you need to make sure to drill the hole before you glue down the track. I did not do this by accident on this switch, and I had to actually rip it up and redo it. So again, we live and learn by mistakes, but now it's perfectly good to go, and it's got the hole drilled down so that the rod can come through. So as you can see, I have drilled the hole, and it's only tore up because, you know, as I was drilling it, sometimes on the foam road bed like this, the drill bit likes to catch it, but now I have room for that to come out. And then when you're gluing down the track, make sure to only glue about here to here so that that switch motor area is not getting glued down, or you'll literally be gluing the switch down. So yeah, very important step there, but again, this is all just pre-preparing for the future. Now, as far as track leads go, I like to do one about every 3 to 4 feet. That's a little overkill for a layout this size, but it will make sure that I have no electrical problems. So how I'll do this, and I'll make a video that goes on Berkshire Station's channel, exactly how to solder each rail joiner. I have one soldered on the positive and the negative side on both sides, and since there's like a kind of a double track main line going on here, I make sure to keep these consistent. And as I solder these joints, I actually have them going to these terminal blocks. So I have these terminal blocks from Amazon here that are super cheap. They was like $14 for a pack of them, and they're super easy to use. So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and climb underneath the layout, show you exactly what I'm talking about. So, although it might be a little dark under here, which we'll go ahead and turn the camera brightness up, you can see that I have the wires coming out from the track leads per lead right here. I've got about 3 wired up right now. And then I purposely drilled holes on the beams of this table just to make sure that I can thread wiring through it like this. It'll keep everything nice, clean, and consistent. But what I've done here is I've got the positives going to the positive and the negatives going to the negative. This makes it super easy to wire up just doing it this way, because you can add these connectors right here and make it all positive or all negative. And then you have 2 of those wires going straight to your power panel. Super easy to do. This is by far the easiest way to do terminal wires. Just make sure that when you attach the wires that you have one that's long enough. If not, you're going to have to use some sort of connector or solder wires together. But doing it this way is way easier than soldering it to this. These are just little screw terminals, and it makes it super easy and straightforward. So I know that everything that I've explained so far seems pretty complicated, but don't worry, it will all get easier to understand as the layout comes together more. So this layout definitely has a lot of switches, and switch motors are a very important part of this, but one thing that we're definitely going to make sure to do is on some of these we're going to power the electro frogs. So when you buy your switches, you could either buy one with an insulated frog, or you could buy one that has a way to power the frog. These have metal frogs that are not powered when you get them to start with. There's a little plastic insulator in between here, but you have the ability to power them. There's a little connector for a wire. These two are not going to be powered because they're on the main line. I'm not that worried about trains getting stuck on them. For sidings and stuff, they'll probably be powered because locomotives are going to be going really slow and you know, really nice smooth movements, and I don't want the power to cut out. So what we'll do is we'll end up attaching a wire to these electro frogs here and threading it down into the switch machine. And again, I will do a video explaining switch machines and exactly how they work and exactly how to wire them up. They're a lot easier than you think, and I'll make a diagram as well that fully explains exactly how I wire mine up. You know, I've been doing some experimenting with it myself just to see what the easiest way to wire them up is. But yeah, so I've given a little bit of insight on this track work. I know it's a pretty boring topic, but it is definitely one of the most important fundamentals of a brand new layout. If your track work is not good, then you will have problems. This is actually a mistake that I made on this first O-scale layout. I put one terminal lead wire, which, you know, seems fine because it was a 4x8 at the time. But what I ended up having problems with is when I got older locomotives like Proto Sound 2 or TMCC engines, I was having power drops happening. And I noticed it throughout the layout, even though they had command in them and cruise control. And it's because they were taking up more power. Now, part of that was definitely a power issue, but I added terminal leads, and after adding those terminal leads, everything worked a whole lot smoother. So it was very nice and refreshing to see that. And it made me realize that, you know, on the next layout I build, I definitely need to add more than just one terminal connection. It will save you a lot of headache in the future. And when I expanded this layout, I also did that on this one. So yeah, 5x9 layout is basically bulletproof at this point. And that's exactly how I'm going about this with this layout. So now that we've talked about track work, let's go ahead and talk about the future plans and exactly how this layout is going to be made, because it's pretty cool. And the way that's going to be made is just going to, it's basically an illusion is what this layout is, but it's going to be perfect for filming, and it's going to be an absolutely gorgeous layout, and it'll just showcase exactly what all you can do in just a 4x8 space. So yeah, let's go ahead and explain the future plans. So on this layout and the original layout plan online, it inspired me to do what is called a backdrop in the center. And as you can see, I've already marked a line exactly in the center of this table, 2 feet into the table because it's a 4x8. And I actually put backdrop right down just so I know. That's another thing I like to do when I build layouts is I like to write little notes. They're gonna get covered up with ground cover anyways, but it's just a way of keeping up with exactly what line is what. And when you're building a layout, it's always best to pre-plan. I've found, you know, it to be way easier that way. I really had to with that layout because the buildings, you know, there's such a tight space on a 5x9 layout for that many buildings in O-scale. So I really had to be careful about planning it. But this layout is going to be separated by a backdrop that starts about here and will end all the way at the end of the table. And then there'll be cutouts for here. And then the really awesome thing about this layout is that it has a purpose. Now what I mean by that is that when you're doing switching operations on this layout, there is a purpose to doing them. And I know that seems kind of weird, but what I mean by that is, so essentially these two tracks here are industry tracks to a coal mine. I have a coal mine kit that's going to be going right here soon, and then that is supposed to represent a power plant, which I will also be blacking out these windows at some point just so that you can't see the inside of this, and it'll create this illusion. Because as you can see, I have drawn the mountain right here, and then there's going to be a tunnel porter right here. The mountain is about right here, and then it also comes out of here. So this is kind of embedded in the mountain a little bit, and so will the coal mine. So these two industry tracks, one of them is supposed to be the loaded cars and one of them is the empty cars. So how this works is as you put the loaded cars into the power plant, they will come out the other end on the coal mine side, and it'll look like the coal mine just provided you with loaded hopper cars of coal. And then as you drop off the loaded ones at the power plant, you pick up the empties. And as you take the empties to the coal mine to drop them off to have more coal, you take the loaded back to the power plant. So it just creates this really cool cycle of a purpose of switching on the layout. And then the other industry tracks are for any kind of train car you want. there'll be two industry tracks right here, and then another industry, two industry tracks, and one of them will be a locomotive track just to store engines. Then there's another one over there, and then the runaround track to make switching operations really interesting. But I am super excited about this concept with the coal mine. It'll make switching operations a really fun thing to do. And then this layout is designed where somebody, you know, two people can operate this layout, where somebody can be doing switching operations on this end of the layout while somebody's running a mainline train, and still have plenty of room because the runaround track is so large. And it's perfect for that. But everything here is going to be covered by a mountain. So this side's going to have a mountain right here, and this side's going to have a mountain right here. And this will create this illusion that the train is going somewhere. You know, it's not just one tiny town, it'll look like two completely different towns. And then you could run, you know, 20 car long HO scale freight trains and you'd have no idea how long they actually are, and it creates this illusion. That's the biggest thing with this, is model railways, we're creating an illusion of real life. And obviously we're having fun with it, but you know, from a perspective of real railroad stuff, this is going to be as close as you can get, especially in a small space like this. So if you're trying to, you know, utilize the space that you have, definitely try a backdrop in the center. It'll create this really nice illusion. Now, with mountains here, we got to make sure that we have enough tunnel portal clearance, and I purposely bought an auto rack to make sure that when I do the tunnel portals that it doesn't hit the side, because these are only 22-inch radius curves. Although that's plenty big enough for most equipment sold by HO scale locomotive manufacturers, it will be a problem hitting tunnel portals if we're not careful. So we'll probably do a double track tunnel portal. And then the coal mine is going to have, you know, the area where they load the coal covering this up, and then the coal mine itself right here. So everything will just be a really nice illusion. And then my plan for over here is the station's going to be about right here. I'm not exactly sure on the final placement of it. It's going to kind of be in this dip here, and I figured it would just create a really interesting shot like that right there. And then there'll be a freight track right here as a railroad crossing goes all the way over these three tracks. It'll be a super interesting railroad crossing. And then there'll be a parking lot right here for the station and the coal mine workers. And then right here on this freight track will be a little freight depot. And then for right here in this section will be a small downtown. I really want it to feel like a small town. I'm from Mount Airy, North Carolina, and it's a small town. And I really like the idea of basing it on that, you know. There's actually a 3D print of a building that's in my downtown, like the Earl Theater I found on eBay, and that'd be really cool to add to this, just to have some hometown feelings to the layout. And it'll make it a lot more personable. But yeah, that's kind of the plan for this side of the layout, which is going to be the most interesting side. The other side is going to be more industrial. I want it to feel completely different than this side. Even though there's a coal mine there, I want this side to feel like it's railroad and it's business. So there's going to be a switchback design here. So these switches are going to be installed right here, and then right here is going to be the switchback, and then the other switch is going to be installed right here, and then I just bought this new switch that's going to be installed right here. So there'll be one track that leads to this building right here that's going to be slightly angled like that, just to create some, you know, some different angles and kind of break up the feeling of it's following a table line. And then there'll be one track here next to this building that's an engine track, and then one more that's an industry track where they can switch the cars out from the industry and drop off the empties and this and that. But this side is going to be mostly just gravel parking lots, some telephone poles, probably a factory right here as well that's cut in half, which most of these buildings are going to be cut in half just to fit with the backdrop, which, you know, is a scary thing to do, but if you make sure you plan it right, it should be fine. But yeah, it's going to be really cool, because it's just going to be all industrial. I'm not exactly sure the future plans of what buildings exactly are going to go here, and I have to do a little bit of shopping to kind of figure it out. But I do know that this one for sure is going here. I really love how this thing looks. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. I found it pre-made, and again, I found this at Berkshire Station. They buy used collections as well, and they will actually help you out with that. You know, if you're trying to find buildings that are already made or something, I'm sure they have some for sale. And then if you're trying to find good deals on locomotives and train cars, they have that as well, which, you know, most of the stuff that I've bought for my layout has actually been from them, especially my locomotives and rolling stock. So again, super great train store. Definitely make sure to check them out. But yeah, that's kind of the overall plan with this. It's a lot to take in at one time. I've got a million ideas running through my head all the time. I have really bad ADHD, so you know, I'm always thinking about 30 different steps on this layout at one time, but it's going to be a super fun process, and I really can't wait to see how it turns out. But yeah, until next time on the next layout update, that's all that I got for now. We'll go ahead and run a couple trains around the layout just so you can see the layout up and operating now that it's got some wires hooked up to it and a little bit of track. So yeah, let's get into it.